Bio. We're going to finish chapter 6 today with charting a course for the future. So this is going to be focused on what humans need to do in the future, or what could be future problems that we could see if we do not change the way we're interacting with our biosphere today. So there are two types of global change or concern for biologists that we have. So the first one being that the ozone layer in the atmosphere and our global climate system. So the reason why these are kind of a concern because researchers have been gathering data to monitor and evaluate the effects of the human activities on these two important systems. So again, we're really concerned about our ozone layer, which hopefully you've heard about before, and our global climate system. So our ozone layer is being depleted. So again, we've probably heard this before as well. I think we've talked about it in class. So between 20 and 50 kilometers above our Earth's surface, the atmosphere contains a relatively high concentration of ozone gas. And this layer of the atmosphere is called the ozone layer. And the reason why this layer is important because it absorbs a good deal of harmful ultraviolet, or just simply UV, radiation from sunlight before it reaches our surface. So this is a big cause of skin cancer, being overexposed to this UV radiation. Sun produces like a great deal of it, and our ozone layer protects us from this harmful radiation. And again, exposure to UV, again I said it can cause cancer, it can cause damage to your eyes, it can also decrease certain organisms' resistance to disease, and it can damage plant leaf tissue, and it can damage phytoplankton in the oceans as well. So those last two, they need sunlight to survive. However, this UV exposure can cause them, it can damage their tissue, and therefore they won't be able to carry out the functions of, again, photosynthesis as normally as they could. And so how we've kind of discovered that this ozone has been depleted is that in the 1970s, the scientists discovered a hole in this layer over Antarctica, and then after it was first discovered, the ozone hole, it just grew larger. So it wasn't like, oh gosh, you saw me, so now it's going to grow bigger. It's because human activities caused this thing to grow. And then a similar ozone hole has also appeared over the Arctic area as well. And the reason why, again, we knew this hole was there and it grew larger, and the reason why it was growing larger is because a research team, they published data showing that gases known as chlorofluorocarbons, or simply just CFCs, so probably need to know these two words right here, chlorofluorocarbons and CFCs, and these are the types of materials that damage our ozone layer. So need to know that, that's going to be something important. And then the reason why these CFCs were causing a problem is because they were very widely used because they were aerosol cans, so that was a big thing. They were what made aerosol cans work. And they were used as coolants in refrigerators, freezers, and air conditioners, and they were used in the production of plastic foam. So those are three huge things that gets used in America daily, most likely, and so they was getting into the atmosphere and causing huge holes. And so the U.S. and other nations, they began to reduce the use of CFCs, and in 1987 they eventually banned them. So now you cannot use a CFC in anything because it causes such large-scale damage to our ozone layer. And then since the ban, our level in our CFCs in the atmosphere has decreased, which indicates the ban will have positive long-term effects on our global environment. So that's actually a positive outlook for the future, that we've actually made a change. And actually it has caused some positive things to occur. One thing being that the ozone holes should shrink and disappear within 50 years. So we've actually done a pretty good job at getting rid of the CFCs, and that was actually a big cause of the hole in the ozone layer. Now it's a possibility that the hole could actually shrink and disappear. So that's our first concern for the future. Our second concern is global climate change, and this is probably a major one. And because all life on Earth depends on climate conditions such as temperature and rainfall, so there's all different organisms living in different parts of the world, all need different types of temperature, all need different amount of rainfall, and many ecologists are concerned about strong evidence that this climate could be changing. So that's a problem because, again, animals are very sensitive, plants can be very sensitive, all living things are very sensitive to the environments that they live in, and if the climate changes, that could throw off a lot of different things. And since the late 19th century, our average temperature has risen about 0.06 degrees Celsius, and data can indicate that in 1980, the average temperatures have risen between 0.2 and 3 degrees Celsius as well. So that might seem like a small change, however, just that change, again, it can cause large-scale effects that we can't even hardly fathom. And again, our organisms are very sensitive, so it could cause huge problems for them as well. And then the term that we use to describe the increase in the average temperature in our biosphere is called global warming. So we've probably all heard of this before, so this is an important word. You need to write that down, global warming. And one sign of global warming is the melting of our polar ice caps. And so here's kind of a picture of, again, what our ice looked like in 1999, and then the melting of the ice that has occurred since 1979. So it used to cover a lot more expansive area. This purple is all ice that has been melted. And so some people might try to tell you that global warming is a fraud, but there is some evidence of global warming. So our geological record, however, does show that Earth's climate history has changed repeatedly during its history. So it could be things like the Ice Age. So there's no humans really around then burning up any fossil fuels, so that was just natural by the Earth. And researchers must determine whether the current warming trend is part of a larger natural cycle of climate change or whether it's caused by human activity. So is it just the Earth going through its normal motions, or is this solely because of humans? And a widely accepted hypothesis is that the current warming is related in part to human activities that add carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. So we've mentioned those before in our last chapter. And the burning of the fossil fuels, along with cutting and burning of forests, adds CO2 or carbon dioxide to the atmosphere faster than our carbon cycle removes it. So even if we are burning out our fossil fuels, we're not helping our problem because we're also cutting down trees, and the trees would be the ones that would help remove the carbon dioxide. But now it's widely accepted that our current global warming is in fact due to those major changes done by humans. And data shows that the concentrations of CO2 in the atmosphere have been rising for 200 years. Then as a result, the atmosphere's natural greenhouse effect is intensified, causing the atmosphere to retain more heat. So remember, greenhouse effect is just the Earth retaining heat, and so now with this increase in CO2 and other greenhouse gases, it's causing that to increase. And so the reason why that's a problem is because computer models suggest that this could raise the global surface temperature by 1 to 2 degrees Celsius by the year 2050, and that doesn't seem like a whole lot, but it could cause problems like sea levels rising enough to flood coastal areas, which would affect coastal ecosystems as well as human communities. And then parts of North America may experience more droughts during the summer growing season because of this increased temperature. So it could actually flood areas, people living on the coast, and cause droughts to the point to where we could not grow as many crops as we usually do. And then new organisms would be able to live in places where they once could not, so they could come in and take over an environment. It could be an invasive species. And other organisms may become threatened or extinct in areas where they once thrived. One example right now is polar bears. They live up there in the polar ice caps, and it is melting, so they're losing their habitats daily. So this whole chapter is focused on humans and the biosphere, so now we need to look at the value of a healthy biosphere. So ecosystems provide many goods and services, such as water purification and waste recycling, and they're also a reservoir of organisms that may one day provide humans with new medicines and new crops. So we definitely need to protect these things because, again, they basically help us survive. We would not be here without all of our living things. And this is just some of the services that our ecosystem provides for us, and we can go over these more in class. I'll have them in your notes. These are all just different things that our ecosystem carries out. And people can make wise choices in the use and conservation of our resources by avoiding and using more water than necessary. They can plant trees to replace those that have been cut down. They can recycle and reuse trash and other waste. And they can safely remove hazardous materials as well. So that's how we can all help out to make sure our biosphere is still around for our kids and our kids' kids. So that's it for Chapter 6. Let me know if you have any questions.